It was at the Surrey Garden Music Hall, where Spurgeon had, I would say, one of the two major down points of his life. Only a few weeks into their service, and the place is jam-packed. In fact, it's so jam-packed, it's quite dangerous. 24,000 people are jammed into this music hall, and Spurgeon gets up and begins to preach. And as the crowd began to hush, as Spurgeon began to declare Christ, some hooligan at the back of the hall began to yell out, "Fire! Fire! Fire! Run!" And suddenly a stampede ensued. And thousands of people started running in all sorts of directions, and people getting crushed to death, and bones were broken, and lives were lost. And Spurgeon sunk into such a depression, he had to be carried off the stage, and he stayed in that state of depression for many, many months. He wouldn't preach, he wouldn't come out of his room, he would barely eat or drink. He was just sunken into the deepest of despair. It felt like the devil had won a victory over him. Remember, he had all these weeks and months and years of this kind of ascending ministries. Everything was going good. It was all wins on the board. It was all points and runs, and it was success. And Spurgeon now felt like he had been betrayed. It had all come apart. Not only that, all of the news media took that opportunity to entirely lambast him in the media. They would cartoon him in pictures, they would mock him, they blamed him for the tragedy. They said that the blood and the deaths were on his hands. He's solely responsible. What was he thinking? Why did he allow this to happen? He sunk into the darkest of deep depression of his life. It took months for him to finally feel like he could come out and preach the gospel again. And I'll say this, almost as a side note, this is an interesting tidbit. If you're ever feeling like you want to get into reading Spurgeon's sermons, I wholeheartedly recommend the practice. But as one of the first sermons you read, I would recommend go and find the sermon, the first one he preached once he emerged out of that deep and dark despair of depression. It's a challenging, emotive, it is full of pathos, and you can almost get a sense of just the dark, cavernous depression that he'd lingered in for so very long. In fact, Spurgeon at that point, the rest of his life, never really shook off that depression. There's another contributing factor to that we'll speak a little bit about a little bit later on in his life. The other, as I said, two major dark moments in his ministry and his life. But this chaotic stampede at the Surrey Garden Music Halls, many commentators, many biographers say it almost certainly shaved years off his life. Such was the rapid decline of his health and his psyche. We need to move on. We could do a whole series on what's called the Great Stampede of the Surrey Garden Music Halls.